Hi, algebra students. Welcome to today's lesson in combining like terms of polynomials. So before we get too much into the definition of polynomials, let's make sure we talk about some older vocabulary words you may have seen. An expression, okay? So far we've been dealing with expressions that contain numbers, variables, and different operations, but none of them have an equal sign. Those are different than equations, which we'll study in a couple days. There are also coefficients. Coefficients are any number that's multiplied in front of a variable. Finally, terms. Terms are separated by addition or subtraction. All right, so let's take a look at number 1. 2x squared minus 9x plus 13. This one has a 2x squared minus 9x plus 13. Okay, so this one has 3 terms. This expression has 3 terms. And the coefficients are any number multiplied in front of a variable. So because one of the variables is x squared, we have to count that coefficient separate. So that one belongs to the 2x squared, right? And then the other coefficient is -9. You always want to include the symbol or the sign in front of the number. So since it's a subtraction, -9, that means the 9 is negative. And that belongs to the x. So you have to pay attention to the x's and their exponents for the coefficients, okay? All right, so let's take a look at the next one. We have -7n cubed plus 11. So we have the -7n cubed and then the 11. The 11 does not have a variable that's attached to it with multiplication, but the -7 is attached to the n cubed. So the -7 is a coefficient that comes again from the -7n cubed. And when you're looking at the different addition and subtraction signs, so coming back to number 1, right, you can look at all the addition and subtraction signs and it tells you how many terms there are. So here there are only 2 terms. Okay, there are no addition or subtraction signs in number 3. There's only a -5 times y. There's nothing added or subtracted. So this is an example of a one single term. But the -5 is multiplied with a variable, so the -5 is a coefficient. So again, the -5 is multiplied with a y, so that counts as a coefficient. Okay, so if you remember in our examples, we had 3 terms, 2 terms, 1 term. We had exponents of 3, exponents of 2 on the variable. So let's review a couple basics in terms of how to name or classify polynomials. So classifying is a fancy word for naming a polynomial. So the degree is the highest exponent that you see in an expression. Okay, so the degree is the highest exponent that you see. If so you would call a polynomial a constant if there was just a number without a variable. Linear would be if x is to the first power and that's the highest exponent. Quadratic is what it's called when the highest exponent is 2, and cubic is the highest exponent of 3. You can also name a polynomial by how many terms it has. So monomial is for 1 term, binomial is for 2 terms. So think bicycle has 2 wheels, right? Binomial, trinomial, tricycle has 3 wheels. And if it has 4 or more terms, we just call it a polynomial. So we'll be practicing this vocabulary as we work. Combining like terms is our focus for today, okay? So when you're combining like terms, you're going to add or subtract only the coefficients of like terms. The exponents are going to stay the same. Now that I'll show you a couple examples of that. And just so you know, like terms, okay, are the only ones that you're allowed to add or subtract the coefficients for. Here's the definition of like terms. They are terms that have the same variable and the same exponent. So which of the following are like terms? Well, I like to start by looking for the ones with the same exponent and the same letter, right? Same variable. All right, so I'm going to color code here. 6x squared and negative 2x squared are like terms because they both have an x squared. Negative 3y and positive 5y are also like terms because they both have a y to the first power. So you see how there's no exponent visible? That means it's a 1. And the the positive 7x does not have a like term. There's no other term that just has x to the first power. We had x squares, but no other terms that just have an x. Okay, go ahead and pause the video and see if you can underline some of the like terms. Remember, I used different types of underlining to group them. So pause the video, push play when you're ready. Okay, so there are 3 like terms that have a variable of x, and there are 3 like terms that are called constants because they do not have a variable. So remember up here we said that if a number doesn't have a variable, it's called a constant. So the negative 10, the 5, and the negative 2.7 are constants. And they are like terms because none of them have a variable. Okay, so one of the important things you have to remember when you are combining like terms is in your final answer, you need to make sure you write it in standard form, okay? So that means the exponent should be in decreasing order from biggest to smallest. So let's take this example for this next example. We have negative 10x to the third power. That is the highest exponent, so that term should be written first. After the cubics come the quadratics, so the negative 2x squared. Right? So the exponents are decreasing in value. Then should come the 7x because it has like an imaginary 1. It's x to the first power. And finally, your constant terms should go last. So that's how all your answers should be written. All right, let's practice combining like terms. Simplify each expression, write the answer in standard form. Again, I like to start by finding the highest exponent. In this case, it's the m squareds. Those are called quadratic terms. Whenever you don't see a visible coefficient in front of a variable, you're more than welcome to put a 1. So I'm going to go ahead and add negative 1 plus 2. And I'm going to keep the exponent the same and the variable the same. So negative 1 plus 2 is 1m squared. So those are taken care of. Then I'm going to move on to the m to the first power, which is negative 7m plus 7. So negative 7 plus 7 is 0. Because you get 0, you don't even put the m anymore, okay? Because if you write 1m, then you're telling me there's 1m left, and there's no more m. So the m's, I'm not even going to write anymore. They canceled out. Last but not least, we have 5 minus 3, or 5 plus negative 3. We're adding them, right? Or in this case, 5 minus 3. You read it from left to right. It's subtracting. So that's going to give you 5 minus 3 is 2. This is considered a quadratic binomial. Quadratic binomial. The highest exponent is 2, and it has 2 terms. So I'm choosing words from up here. Quadratic binomial. The directions didn't ask us to name it, but it's important for you guys to be exposed to that vocabulary if you haven't been so yet. Okay, again, we're combining like terms, so I'm looking for the highest exponents first. So I have 3 plus 6. I'm just reading it from left to right. 3 plus 6 is 9. Keep the variables the same. Oops, I realize okay. So 9n squared. Then look for the ones that have n to the first power. So negative 7 minus 4. You're going to get the same answer if you do negative 7 minus 4 or if you add the like terms. Negative 7 plus negative 4. It's the same thing, okay? You should get negative 11 n, right? And then finally, we have 3 halves plus 5 halves. 3 halves plus 5 halves is 8 halves, which gives you 4. And you're more than welcome to use your calculator if you need to for these. Okay, it's okay if you get a couple decimals here and there. You can use a calculator to combine them. So for example, 0.4 y to the third and minus 5 y cubed, right? So 0.4 minus 5, you might not be able to do that in your head, so you're welcome to use a calculator. Okay, so once those are combined, you can go ahead and move on to the quadratics. Unfortunately, there's no other quadratic besides 0.3y squared, so I'm going to leave that by itself. So that's taken care of. And the constants are always going to be at the very end. So you have negative 2.1 plus 1.8. Again, if you need to borrow a calculator, no problem. All right, why don't you go ahead and pause the video right now and try the last problem by yourself, and when you're ready, push play. Okay, the highest exponent is the cubed, negative 4k cubed. Negative 2k squared minus 2k squared become negative 4k squared. They do not cancel because they're not opposites. However, negative 8 plus 8 do cancel, so that should be your final answer. As always, if you need extra help, feel free to reach out. Have a great day.